She's still playing with her computer toys? My uncle's voice carried across the mahogany boardroom table, followed by the familiar sound of stifled laughter. I sat there in my thrift store blazer, laptop bag at my feet, watching my family's faces twist into those practiced smiles they reserve for conversations about my hobby business. What they didn't know was that my phone had been buzzing all morning with calls from Seattle. Amazon wanted to talk acquisition, 7 figures. But I wasn't ready to tell them that yet. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The Peterson Family Trust meeting happened every December, right after Christmas, when everyone was still pretending to care about each other. The conference room at Dad's law firm smelled like leather and old money, the kind of place where handshakes decided million-dollar deals, and where my presence felt like a glitch in the system. I'd been running Data Stream Solutions for 3 years now, working out of the converted garage behind my rental house in Austin. While my cousins were climbing corporate ladders and buying BMWs, I was writing code at 2 a.m., surviving on energy drinks and the stubborn belief that I was building something that mattered. My family saw it differently. To them, I was the 27-year-old who dropped out of law school to play with computers. "Emily's still doing that website thing, right?" Aunt Margaret asked, adjusting her Hermes scarf. She said, "website thing," the way most people might say, infectious disease. Her manicured fingers drummed against her coffee cup as she glanced at my Uncle Richard, who was already shaking his head. "It's not sustainable," Uncle Richard declared, leaning back in his chair like he was delivering a medical diagnosis. "She needs to think about her future. Real career paths, not these internet fantasies." My cousin Bradley, fresh from his promotion at Goldman Sachs, straightened his tie and joined in. "I mean, how much could she possibly be making? A few hundred a month? Maybe 1,000 if she's lucky?" He laughed, the sound bouncing off the wood-paneled walls. "I spend more than that on lunch meetings." I kept my expression neutral, fingers clasped in my lap. They had no idea that DataStream had processed over $12 million in transactions last quarter alone. They didn't know about the Fortune 500 clients who relied on my platform for their data analytics. They certainly didn't know about the Amazon executives who'd been calling me for weeks, or the preliminary offer that had made my lawyer's jaw drop. "Emily works very hard," Mom said quietly, but even she sounded uncertain. She'd never quite understood what I did, just that it involved computers and kept me locked away in my garage most evenings. "She's always been creative. The word hung in the air like a consolation prize. In the Peterson family, creative was code for unemployable. My grandfather had built a construction empire from nothing. My father had expanded it into commercial real estate. My uncles had diversified into finance and law. We were builders, deal makers, people who moved concrete and steel, not pixels and data. "The thing is," my cousin Sarah added, fresh from her MBA program, "small businesses fail at an alarming rate. Especially in tech. Emily might think she's the next Mark Zuckerberg, but statistically speaking," she trailed off with a shrug that said everything. Dad cleared his throat. "I've offered Emily a position at the firm multiple times. Good starting salary, benefits, room for growth. But she prefers her independence." The way he said independence made it sound like a character flaw. I thought about the email I'd received that morning from Jennifer Chen, Amazon's head of strategic acquisitions. "We're prepared to discuss a significant partnership opportunity," she'd written. "Your platform's AI capabilities and market penetration have caught our attention at the highest levels." The preliminary figures they'd mentioned were more than my family's entire annual revenue combined. But sitting in that boardroom, surrounded by dismissive looks and patronizing smiles, I felt like that kid again. The one who'd been told she was too sensitive for business. The one who'd been steered toward safer career paths. The one whose ideas were met with patient explanations about how the real world works. "I think what everyone's trying to say," Uncle Richard continued, "is that it's time to be realistic. You're not getting any younger, Emily. You need health insurance, retirement planning, stability. This computer hobby isn't going to provide that. Computer hobby. 3 years of 80-hour weeks, building algorithms that revolutionized how mid-market companies processed customer data. A platform that had been featured in TechCrunch, Forbes, and the Wall Street Journal. A business that employed 12 people and had attracted interest from 3 of the largest tech companies in the world. All reduced to a hobby. Maybe she could do it part-time, Aunt Margaret suggested helpfully, as a side project, while she built a real career. Bradley nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. I know guys who do coding stuff on weekends. Make a little extra cash. Nothing wrong with that as a hobby. I watched their faces, these people who'd known me my entire life, who'd seen me graduate summa cum laude from UT, who'd watched me win the state programming competition 3 years running. They looked at me and saw failure. They looked at my work and saw delusion. My phone buzzed again, another message from Amazon's team. Available for a call this afternoon? We'd like to discuss timeline and structure. I glanced around the table one more time. At Uncle Richard's expensive suit and condescending smile. At Aunt Margaret's perfectly styled hair and carefully crafted look of concern. At my cousin's confident expressions, so sure they knew what success looked like. They were about to learn that success doesn't always wear a suit and tie. Sometimes it shows up in a thrift store blazer, carrying a laptop bag, with mud on its boots and fire in its eyes. But they didn't know that yet. They were still stuck in their old world, where worth was measured in square footage and stock portfolios, where innovation was dangerous and different was wrong. I smiled politely and nodded, letting them think they'd won this round. After all, the best part of any good story is the twist ending. And mine was about to begin. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The meeting dragged on, each agenda item feeling like another small cut. Uncle Richard was presenting the quarterly family trust reports, his voice carrying that particular brand of authority that came from never having been wrong about anything in his life. The numbers were solid. Construction contracts, real estate investments, municipal bonds. Safe, predictable, respectable. As you can see, he said, clicking through his PowerPoint slides, traditional investments continue to outperform speculative ventures. The Peterson family portfolio has maintained steady growth for 43 years precisely because we stick to fundamentals. I knew that was a dig at me, even though he didn't look in my direction. Everything was a dig at me these days. My choice to leave law school. My decision to turn down the family business. My phase of thinking I could build something from nothing. Speaking of speculative ventures, Bradley said with a grin, Emily, how's your little startup doing? Still working out of that garage? It's going well, I replied simply. I'd learned not to elaborate. Every detail I shared became ammunition for their next round of concern trolling. Define well, Sarah pressed, pulling out her phone to take notes. She was always taking notes, cataloging everyone's failures and successes like she was building a case study. Are you profitable yet? Do you have employees? Actual customers? I could have told them about Marcus Chen, my lead developer who'd left Google to join my team. About Elena Martinez, my sales director, who'd brought over 3 major clients from her previous company. About the partnership with Microsoft that had tripled our user base in 6 months. Instead, I said, we're making progress. Progress. Aunt Margaret repeated the word like it tasted sour. Sweetheart, you've been making progress for 3 years. At what point do you admit this isn't working? The thing was, I'd been here before, not in this exact room, but in versions of it. When I was 12 and announced I wanted to learn programming instead of joining the debate team. When I was 16 and chose AP Computer Science over AP Economics. When I was 22 and said I wanted to build something instead of inheriting something. You know what your problem is, Emily? Uncle Richard set down his coffee cup with a deliberate clink. You think you're special? You think you can reinvent the wheel. But business is business. There are proven formulas, established paths. You can't just make up your own rules. I thought about the email thread I'd been having with Amazon's legal team. 3 different law firms, working on due diligence. A valuation that would make Uncle Richard's construction company look like a lemonade stand. But I kept my face neutral, my hands steady. Remember when she wanted to skip college and go straight to some coding boot camp? Bradley laughed. Thank God Dad talked sense into her. At least she got a degree, even if she's not using it. The boot camp would have been faster, I said quietly. Faster to what? Failure? Sarah shook her head. Emily, I'm saying this because I care about you. You're living in a fantasy. These tech success stories you read about, they're lottery tickets. For every Mark Zuckerberg, there are 10,000 people who lost everything chasing impossible dreams. My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer Chen. Legal team has completed preliminary review. Very impressed with your IP portfolio. Can we schedule a call for tomorrow morning? I slipped the phone back into my pocket and looked around the table. These people had watched me grow up. They'd seen me win science fairs, graduate with honors, earn recognition from professors who called me exceptional. But none of that mattered because I'd chosen a path they couldn't understand. The worst part, Anne Margaret continued, is that you're wasting your potential. You're smart, Emily. You could have been a lawyer, a doctor, something respectable. Instead, you're playing around with computers like a teenager. I'm not playing around, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. I built something. I have clients, employees, revenue. How much revenue? Uncle Richard interrupted. Because if you're making less than 6 figures, this conversation is academic. I almost laughed. Last month's revenue alone had been close to 7 figures. But I knew better than to share real numbers. They'd find a way to dismiss them, minimize them, explain why they didn't count. It's not about the money, I said instead. Everything is about money, Bradley replied. That's business 101. If you're not making money, you're not running a business, you're running a charity. The irony was suffocating. These people who'd inherited their wealth, who'd never built anything from scratch, who'd never risked failure because they'd never risked anything at all, they were lecturing me about business fundamentals. I think, Dad said slowly, what everyone is trying to say is that we're worried about you. We want to see you succeed. But success requires sacrifice. It requires making hard choices. Like giving up childish dreams, Uncle Richard added. Like accepting reality, Aunt Margaret nodded. Like joining the family business where you belong, Bradley finished. I looked at each of them in turn. Uncle Richard, who'd never had an original idea in his life, but could spot a quote, risky investment from across the room. Aunt Margaret, who'd married into wealth and spent her days managing charity events and country club committees. Bradley, who'd parlayed his trust fund into an impressive-sounding job at a firm where his last name opened doors his talent never could. These were the people who were supposed to guide me, the ones who were supposed to believe in me. Instead, they saw my ambition as delusion, my innovation as rebellion, my success as impossible. You know what I find interesting? Sarah said, pulling up something on her tablet. I've been researching failure rates in tech startups. 90% fail within the first 5 years. Of the 10% that survive, most never turn a real profit. You're essentially gambling with your future. Everything is gambling, I replied. Grandpa gambled when he started the construction company. Dad gambled when he expanded into real estate. The only difference is you're gambling with inherited money, and I'm gambling with my own life. The room went quiet. I'd crossed a line, mentioned the thing we weren't supposed to talk about. The fact that none of them had ever started from zero. The fact that their biggest risk was losing money they hadn't earned. That's different, Uncle Richard said coldly. We're talking about proven business models. Construction, real estate, finance. These are industries that have existed for centuries. You're chasing fads. The internet is not a fad, I said. The internet bubble burst 20 years ago, Bradley replied. Smart money moved on. You're fighting the last war. I wanted to tell them about the Fortune 500 companies using my platform, about the AI algorithms that were revolutionizing how businesses processed data, about the patents I'd filed that were already generating licensing inquiries. About the acquisition offers that arrived in my inbox weekly from companies whose names they'd recognize. Instead, I watched them dismiss me with the same patient condescension they'd shown since I was a child. The same looks they'd given me when I'd tried to explain cryptocurrency in 2015, when I'd predicted the rise of remote work in 2019, when I'd suggested they might want to invest in companies like Tesla and Zoom before they became household names. "I just think," Aunt Margaret said gently, "that it's time to be realistic about your limitations. Not everyone can be an entrepreneur, there's no shame in that." My limitations. As if the biggest limitation wasn't sitting at this table, wearing expensive suits and proud smiles, completely blind to the revolution happening around them. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a LinkedIn notification. Amazon had just announced their new AI initiative. The same technology stack I'd been building for 3 years. I smiled and put the phone away. Let them think they'd won this round. Let them believe they understood the world better than I did. Let them feel superior in their ignorance. Because tomorrow morning, I had a call scheduled with Seattle. And after that call, everything was going to change. But for now, I just nodded politely and let them continue their lecture about the importance of playing it safe in a world that rewarded nothing but risk. The meeting finally ended at 4:30 p.m., with the usual promises to stay in touch and think about what we discussed. I packed my laptop slowly, watching my family file out of the conference room, their voices already shifting to dinner plans and weekend getaways. None of them bothered to say goodbye to me directly. He waited until their footsteps faded down the hallway before pulling out my phone. 17 missed calls, 12 text messages, 3 emails marked urgent, all from Seattle. Jennifer Chen had left a voicemail. "Emily, I know you're in meetings today, but we need to talk. The executive team has moved up our timeline. We're looking at a potential announcement before New Year's. Please call me as soon as you get this." I walked to my car, a 5-year-old Honda Civic that Bradley had once called charmingly humble. As I drove back to my house, I thought about the conversation I'd had with Jennifer 3 weeks ago, the one that had started this whole process. It was a Tuesday evening, and I was debugging code when my phone rang. Unknown number from Seattle. "Emily Peterson? This is Jennifer Chen from Amazon Web Services. I hope you don't mind the cold call, but I've been following DataStream Solutions for the past 6 months. Your platform's machine learning capabilities are extraordinary." I'd almost hung up, thinking it was a sales call. Instead, I found myself talking to one of the most powerful people in tech, someone who'd overseen acquisitions worth billions of dollars. "We've been watching your user analytics," she continued. "Your client retention rate is unprecedented. The way you've integrated natural language processing with predictive analytics, it's exactly what we've been trying to build internally for 2 years." That conversation had led to a formal evaluation. Amazon's technical team had spent weeks analyzing my code, interviewing my employees, auditing my financials. They'd found what I already knew. DataStream wasn't just a startup. It was a category-defining platform that had solved problems Fortune 500 companies had been struggling with for decades. Now, sitting in my driveway, I called Jennifer back. "Emily!" Her voice was electric with excitement. "I've been trying to reach you all day." The board meeting went better than expected. "We're prepared to make a formal offer." "I'm listening." $47 million, cash, plus equity in the combined platform division, plus a leadership role overseeing the integration. $47 million. I closed my eyes and thought about Uncle Richard's lecture on traditional investments and proven formulas, about Bradley's concern for my few $100s a month in revenue, about Sarah's statistics on startup failure rates. "There's more," Jennifer continued. "Jeff Wilk wants to meet with you personally. He's been following your work since the TechCrunch article. He thinks DataStream could be the foundation for Amazon's next major platform expansion." Jeff Wilk. The same Jeff Wilk who'd built Amazon's logistics empire, who'd overseen the company's expansion into cloud computing, who was now interested in my little computer hobby. "When do you need an answer?" I asked. "We'd like to announce the acquisition in January. That gives us 3 weeks to finalize due diligence. But Emily, I need you to know, this isn't just about the money. We see DataStream as strategic, game-changing, the kind of platform that defines the next decade of business intelligence." After we hung up, I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at my house. The garage where I'd built everything. The kitchen table where I'd written my first business plan. The spare bedroom where Marcus had worked for 6 months before we could afford real office space. My phone rang again. This time it was Marcus. "Emily, you need to see this. I just got off a call with the Microsoft team. They want to discuss a strategic partnership. Something about integrating DataStream with their Azure platform." "What kind of partnership?" "The kind where they write us a check for $20 million and give us access to their entire enterprise customer base." I laughed, the sound echoing in my empty car. $20 million from Microsoft, $47 million from Amazon, and my family thought I was playing with toys. "There's something else," Marcus continued. "Rebecca just told me Google reached out. They want to talk acquisition too. Apparently, they've been monitoring our growth metrics and they're impressed. Google, Microsoft, Amazon, 3 of the most powerful companies in the world, all fighting over my garage startup. I thought about the last 3 years. The nights I'd worked until dawn, surviving on coffee and determination. The months I'd gone without paying myself, so I could hire better developers. The rejections from investors who couldn't understand what I was building. The doubt that crept in during the hardest moments, when I wondered if my family was right. But I'd kept going because I could see something they couldn't. The future wasn't going to be built by people who played it safe. It was going to be built by people who were willing to risk everything on an idea that hadn't been proven yet. I'd started DataStream with a simple observation. Businesses were drowning in data, but starving for insights. They had terabytes of information, but no way to turn it into actionable intelligence. The existing solutions were either too complicated for small businesses or too expensive for mid-market companies. So I'd built something different. A platform that used artificial intelligence to analyze customer behavior, predict market trends, and optimize business processes in real time. Something that could take a company's raw data and transform it into competitive advantage. The first version had been terrible. Slow, buggy, limited. But I'd kept iterating, kept improving, kept listening to customer feedback. By year 2, we had 50 clients. By year 3, we had 500. Now we were processing data for companies in 47 countries, generating insights that were driving billions of dollars in business decisions. And my family thought I was wasting my potential. Do sell. I walked into my house and opened my laptop. The dashboard showed our real-time metrics. 847 active enterprise clients, 2.3 million individual users, $1.2 million in monthly recurring revenue. The numbers that would make Uncle Richard's construction company look like a side hustle. But it wasn't just about the numbers. It was about the emails I received from small business owners who said DataStream had saved their companies. The testimonials from executives who credited our platform with helping them navigate the pandemic. The developers who'd left big tech companies to join our team because they believed in what we were building. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Emily, I forgot to mention. The acquisition includes a 5-year employment contract with Amazon. Base salary, $2.5 million annually, plus equity, plus bonuses tied to platform performance. Jeff wants to make sure you stay involved long-term. $2.5 million per year for doing work I'd already been doing for free." I thought about Bradley's Goldman Sachs salary, the one he'd bragged about at last year's Christmas dinner. About Uncle Richard's annual profits from his construction contracts. About the trust fund distributions that had funded my cousin's lifestyles for the past decade. None of them made anywhere close to what Amazon was offering me as a starting salary. I opened my email and found the formal offer letter that had arrived while I was in the family meeting. 47 pages of legal language that all boiled down to one simple fact. My computer hobby was worth more than the entire Peterson family business. The offer letter included something else that made me smile. A breakdown of DataStream's intellectual property portfolio. 17 patents pending, 12 already approved. Technology that was so advanced that Amazon's legal team had flagged it as strategically critical to their future AI initiatives. My phone rang one more time. This time it was Rebecca. "Emily, I just got the most interesting call. Forbes wants to do a cover story on DataStream. Something about the AI revolution you haven't heard of. They want to feature you as one of the top entrepreneurs under 30 who are reshaping the tech industry. Forbes. Cover story. Under 30. The same magazine that Uncle Richard read religiously, the one he quoted during his lectures about, quote, real business success. I leaned back in my chair and smiled. Tomorrow was going to be a very interesting day. But first, I had some calls to make. Starting with Jennifer Chen, to tell her that $47 million sounded like a good place to start negotiations. After all, my family had taught me one valuable lesson: never settle for less than your worth. They just had no idea how much that actually was. The next morning, I woke up to 43 notifications on my phone. The tech world moved fast, and news of Amazon's interest had somehow leaked to the venture capital community overnight. My inbox was flooded with congratulations from people I'd never met, investment offers from firms that had previously ignored me, and interview requests from journalists who'd suddenly discovered my overnight success. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd written my first lines of code 3 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me that the most important business meeting of my life was going to happen in the same room where my family had dismissed my dreams over countless holiday dinners. At 9 a.m. sharp, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a Seattle number I now knew by heart. "Emily, it's Jennifer. I have Jeff Wilk, Sarah Morrison from Corporate Development, and David Kim from our AI division on the line. Are you ready for this?" "I'm ready." What followed was the most surreal hour of my life. Jeff Wilk, one of the most powerful executives in the world, spent 20 minutes asking me detailed questions about my algorithms, my vision for the future of business intelligence, and my thoughts on how AI would reshape entire industries. "Emily," he said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd built Amazon's operational empire, "I've been in this business for 20 years. I've seen thousands of platforms, hundreds of acquisitions. What you've built isn't just impressive, it's revolutionary. The machine learning models you've developed are 5 years ahead of anything our internal teams have created." David Kim, Amazon's head of AI, jumped in. "The natural language processing capabilities alone are worth the acquisition price. But combined with your predictive analytics and real-time optimization features, we're looking at technology that could transform how every business in the world operates." They offered me something I'd never expected. Not just money, but respect. These weren't investors trying to take my idea and run with it. These were leaders who understood what I'd built and wanted me to help them build something even bigger. "We're prepared to increase our offer," Sarah Morrison said. $52 million, plus equity that could be worth another $20 million depending on performance metrics, plus complete operational autonomy for the first 2 years. $52 million. I thought about Uncle Richard's construction company, which he'd spent 40 years building and which was worth maybe $10 million on a good day. About Bradley's annual salary, which wouldn't even cover the signing bonus Amazon was offering. Possumer. But the money wasn't the real victory. The real victory was the recognition. The understanding that I hadn't been delusional or naive. I'd been right about the future, and now the future was calling to offer me a seat at the table. After the call ended, I sat in my kitchen for 10 minutes, processing what had just happened. Then I called Marcus. "They increased the offer," I told him. "By how much?" $52 million. Plus equity. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for so long I thought the call had dropped. "Marcus? I'm here. Emily, do you realize what this means? You're about to become one of the youngest tech executives in Amazon's history. This isn't just an acquisition. It's a coronation." He was right. This wasn't just about selling DataStream. It was about validation. About proving that the path I'd chosen wasn't just viable. It was optimal. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Family dinner tonight. Dad's making his famous chili. 6 p.m. Don't be late." I stared at the message, imagining the scene. The same dining room where they'd spent years explaining why my choices were wrong. The same table where Uncle Richard had lectured me about realistic expectations and proven business models. The same chairs where my cousins had made jokes about my computer toys and garage startup. I had a choice to make. I could tell them about the Amazon offer, watch their faces change, see them scramble to recalculate everything they thought they knew about success. Or I could wait. Keep the secret a little longer. Let them continue their patronizing lectures while I held the knowledge that would shatter their entire worldview. Ve'hebel I chose to wait. At 6 p.m., I walked into my parents' house carrying a bottle of wine and the weight of the biggest secret of my life. The dining room smelled like cumin and garlic, and the familiar sounds of family conversation drifted from the kitchen. "Emily!" Mom hugged me like she hadn't seen me in months, even though we'd been in the same room 24 hours ago. "How was your day, sweetheart?" "Productive," I said, which was possibly the understatement of the century. Dad appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "Good to see you, kiddo. I hope you've been thinking about what we discussed yesterday." What we discussed. As if it had been a mutual conversation instead of a one-sided lecture about my failures and limitations. "I have," I replied honestly. "I'd been thinking about it all day, actually. Thinking about how wrong they'd been, how completely they'd misjudged my potential." Uncle Richard and Aunt Margaret arrived at 6:30, followed by Bradley and Sarah, the same cast of characters who'd spent yesterday explaining why my business was doomed to fail. They greeted me with the same mixture of affection and pity they'd shown for years. "Emily, darling," Aunt Margaret kissed my cheek, "you look tired. Are you getting enough sleep? All that computer work must be exhausting." "I'm fine," I said, accepting a glass of wine from Dad. "Just busy." "Still working on that website project?" Bradley asked, settling into his usual chair. "Man, I don't know how you do it. All that technical stuff would drive me crazy." Website project. DataStream Solutions, with its 847 enterprise clients and $1.2 million monthly revenue, had been reduced to a, quote, website project. "It's going well," I said, taking a sip of wine to hide my smile. "That's great," Sarah said, in the tone people use when they don't really want to hear the answer. "Are you making any progress on finding real clients? Like actual paying customers?" I thought about the call I'd had that morning with Jeff Wilk. About the $52 million offer. About the equity package that could make me worth more than everyone in this room combined. "Some progress," I said. During dinner, the conversation followed its usual pattern. Uncle Richard talked about his latest construction contracts. Bradley bragged about his bonus structure at Goldman Sachs. Sarah discussed her job prospects after graduation. Everyone shared their successes, their plans, their bright futures. Nobody asked me about mine. "The thing is," Uncle Richard said, cutting into his chili, "success in business comes down to fundamentals. You need solid revenue streams, predictable cash flow, established customer relationships. These internet companies come and go. But construction? Real estate? That's forever." "Exactly," Bradley agreed. "Tech is all hype and speculation. One day you're the hot new thing, the next day you're obsolete. That's why I stayed in finance. Numbers don't lie." I nodded politely, thinking about the numbers Jennifer Chen had shared with me. Amazon's quarterly revenue, $127 billion. Their market capitalization, $1.6 trillion. The amount they were willing to pay for my internet company, $52 million. "Emily," Dad said, "I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday. I really think you should consider joining the firm. We could use someone with your technical background. Help us modernize our operations." "Modernize how?" I asked. "Well, databases, spreadsheets, that sort of thing. Basic computer skills. It would be perfect for you." Basic computer skills. I'd build artificial intelligence systems that could predict market trends with 94% accuracy. I'd developed machine learning algorithms that Fortune 500 companies use to optimize their entire business operations. I'd created technology that Jeff Wilk called revolutionary, and my father wanted me to help with spreadsheets. "I appreciate the offer," I said, "but I'm committed to DataStream right now." "For how long?" Aunt Margaret asked gently. "Sweetheart, you can't do this forever. At some point, you need to think about stability, about building something lasting. Something lasting, like the platform that Amazon was about to integrate into their core infrastructure, like the technology that would power business intelligence for millions of companies worldwide, like the patents that would generate revenue for decades." "I'm building something lasting," I said. "But what if it doesn't work out?" Sarah pressed. "What if you spend another year or two on this and it goes nowhere? You'll be 30 with no real work experience, no corporate network, no retirement savings. That's a scary position to be in. My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer Chen. Legal team has finalized the acquisition agreement. Excited to welcome you to the Amazon family. This is going to change everything. I looked around the table at my actual family. At the people who were supposed to believe in me, support me, celebrate my successes. Instead, they were planning my failure, preparing me for disappointment, protecting me from dreams they thought were too big. I'll be fine, I said, slipping my phone back into my pocket. Will you? Uncle Richard asked. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're gambling with your future. And in my experience, the house always wins. I smiled, thinking about the house that was about to win. The house in Seattle that had just offered me more money than Uncle Richard would make in 5 lifetimes. You might be surprised, I said. After dinner, I helped Mom clear the dishes, listening to the familiar sounds of family conversation from the dining room. They were talking about me, of course. Discussing my situation with the same concern they'd show for a sick relative. I worry about her, I heard Aunt Margaret say. She's so stubborn. So convinced she's right about everything. She gets that from her mother, Uncle Richard replied. Always has to do things the hard way. The hard way. As if building a revolutionary technology platform from scratch was somehow more difficult than inheriting a family business. As if creating something new was less valuable than maintaining something old. LaShawn. I dried the last plate and hung up the dish towel, thinking about tomorrow. About the contracts I'd sign, the announcements that would be made, the press releases that would shock the business world. But most of all, I thought about the moment when my family would finally understand that their computer hobby dismissal had been the biggest misjudgment of their lives. That moment was coming sooner than they thought. The call came at 8:47 a.m. on a Thursday morning, exactly 1 week after the family dinner. I was in my home office, reviewing the final acquisition documents, when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Emily Peterson? This is Amanda Rodriguez from TechCrunch. I'm calling about the Amazon acquisition. Do you have a moment for a quick interview? My blood went cold. The deal wasn't supposed to be public until Monday. We'd agreed on a coordinated announcement with press releases, interviews, and a carefully orchestrated media blitz. I'm sorry, what acquisition? I said, stalling for time. The Data Stream Solutions acquisition. Our sources are saying Amazon paid north of $50 million for your company. This is huge news, Emily. You're about to become one of the youngest tech executives in Amazon's history. I closed my eyes. Someone had leaked the story. In 3 hours, this would be all over the tech press. By noon, it would hit the mainstream media. By evening, everyone would know. Melwagame, including my family. I can't comment on that right now, I said. Emily, I understand you might be under NDA, but this story is breaking with or without your input. Wouldn't you rather have your voice heard? After I hung up, I called Jennifer Chen immediately. Jennifer, we have a problem. TechCrunch knows about the acquisition. I know, legal is handling it. Someone from our board leaked to a reporter they know. We're moving up the announcement to this afternoon. Are you ready? Was I ready? I had been preparing for this moment for 3 years, but somehow I still felt completely unprepared. Emily, Jennifer continued, I need you to know, this is going to change your life. Once this news breaks, you're going to be a public figure. Tech press, mainstream media, speaking requests, investment opportunities. Everything changes today. At 2 p.m., Amazon issued the press release. The headline read, Amazon acquires Data Stream Solutions for $52 million, expands AI capabilities. Within minutes, my phone started ringing nonstop. Forbes called. The Wall Street Journal called. Bloomberg called. CNN called. My LinkedIn profile crashed from traffic. My Twitter mentions exploded. The garage where I'd built DataStream was about to become the most famous garage in Austin. But the call I was waiting for came at 3:17 p.m. Emily? Mom's voice was shaky. Sweetheart, your father just saw something on the news. Something about your company? What did you see? They're saying Amazon bought it. For $50 million. That can't be right, can it? I took a deep breath. It's right, Mom. Silence. Then, 50 million? Your little computer project? Data Stream Solutions, Mom. And yes, 52 million actually. Oh my God, Emily. Why didn't you tell us? You never asked. That evening, I got 17 calls from family members. Uncle Richard left a voicemail that I played back 3 times just to hear the confusion in his voice. Emily, it's your Uncle Richard. I'm seeing some very interesting news reports. Could you call me back when you get a chance? I think there might be some misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. As if the acquisition was some sort of clerical error. Bradley texted me. Dude, is this real? My entire office is talking about your deal. Everyone's asking if I know you personally. Sarah called crying. Actual tears. Emily, I owe you an apology. I had no idea. I feel so stupid. I was giving you business advice, and you were already more successful than all of us combined. But the most interesting call came from Dad. Emily, I need to understand something. How long has your company been this successful? About 2 years, I said honestly. Maybe longer. 2 years? You've been sitting at our dinner table for 2 years, letting us lecture you about business fundamentals, and you were already running a $50 million company? I tried to tell you it was going well. Going well? Emily, going well is making a profit. This is generational wealth. This is life-changing money. I know, Dad. Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you set us straight? I thought about that question for a long time before answering. Because you weren't listening. You'd already decided what my story was going to be. You were so convinced I was failing that you couldn't see I was succeeding. The next morning, I woke up to 847 new emails. Interview requests, congratulations, investment pitches, speaking opportunities. Someone had created a Wikipedia page about me overnight. There were already 3 different articles analyzing my meteoric rise and overnight success. Overnight success. 3 years of 18-hour days, reduced to an overnight success. At 10 a.m., I had a call scheduled with the entire Peterson family. A conference call that Dad had organized after Uncle Richard demanded an emergency family meeting to discuss my situation. When I dialed in, everyone was already on the line. I could hear the tension in their voices, the awkward shuffling of papers, the cleared throats that meant someone was preparing to say something important. Emily, Uncle Richard began, his voice carrying none of yesterday's condescension, I think we owe you an apology. Several apologies, Aunt Margaret added quickly. We didn't understand what you were building. I feel like an idiot, Bradley said. I've been giving you career advice when you were already more successful than anyone in this family. I'm sorry. We all are, Sarah chimed in. We completely misjudged the situation. The apologies felt hollow, not because they weren't sincere, but because they were reactive. They were sorry because I'd been proven right, not because they'd been wrong. They were apologizing for the outcome, not the process. I appreciate that, I said, but I need you to understand something. This isn't about the money. This is about respect. This is about listening to someone, instead of assuming you know their story. You're right, Dad said. We should have supported you. We should have believed in you. You should have asked, I corrected. You should have been curious about what I was actually building, instead of assuming it was a hobby. Uncle Richard cleared his throat. Emily, I hope you know that despite our misunderstandings, you're still family. And if there's anything we can do to support you going forward... There it was. The real reason for the call. Now that I had something valuable, they wanted to be part of it. Now that I'd proven myself, they were ready to support me. What kind of support? I asked. Well, business advice, connections, strategic guidance. I have 40 years of experience running a company. I could help you navigate the corporate world at Amazon. I almost laughed. Uncle Richard, who'd spent yesterday explaining why my business model was unsustainable, was now offering to help me navigate the corporate world. The same corporate world that had just valued my hobby at $52 million. I appreciate the offer, I said, but I think I'm doing okay on my own." Of course, he said quickly. "I just meant if you ever need anything, I'll let you know." After the call ended, I sat in my office looking at the wall where I'd hung my first business license 3 years ago. Right next to it was a photo of me and my team celebrating our first $1 million month. Below that, a framed printout of our first positive review from a Fortune 500 client. These weren't the achievements of someone who'd gotten lucky. These were the achievements of someone who'd seen the future clearly and worked tirelessly to build it. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Chen. "Congratulations on your first day as a public figure. How does it feel?" I thought about the question. How did it feel to be suddenly visible, after years of being invisible? How did it feel to be respected after years of being dismissed? How did it feel to be proven right after years of being told I was wrong? Meditative, it felt like validation, but not the kind I'd expected. Meditative, I'd thought validation would come from my family finally understanding what I'd built. Instead, it came from something deeper. It came from knowing that I'd trusted my instincts when everyone else had doubted them. It came from knowing that I'd persevered when everyone else had given up on me. It came from knowing that I'd been right about the future, even when the people who were supposed to believe in me had been wrong. The real victory wasn't the money or the recognition. The real victory was the knowledge that I'd never have to doubt myself again. That I'd proven, once and for all, that different doesn't mean wrong. That unconventional doesn't mean impossible. That sometimes the people who laugh loudest are the ones who understand the least. And now, finally, they understood. 3 days after the Amazon announcement, I walked into Starbucks on South Lamar, and the barista recognized me. "You're Emily Peterson, the data stream girl." She practically shouted it across the cafe. "I saw you on CNN yesterday. That's so cool that you're from Austin." I smiled politely and ordered my usual coffee, but the interaction left me unsettled. This was my neighborhood Starbucks. I'd been coming here for 3 years, ordering the same drink, sitting at the same table by the window. Yesterday I was invisible. Today I was the data stream girl. The local Austin Business Journal had run a front-page story about me with the headline, "From Garage to Glory, Austin Entrepreneur Strikes Gold." The article included a photo of my house, my actual house, with a caption that read, "The modest home where a tech revolution was born." Modest. 3 days ago, Bradley had called it charmingly humble. Now it was the birthplace of a tech revolution. My phone had been ringing constantly. Venture capitalists who'd ignored my emails for years were suddenly eager to grab coffee and catch up. Stanford Business School invited me to speak at their entrepreneurship conference. The mayor of Austin wanted to present me with a key to the city. But the most surreal change was in my family dynamics. Uncle Richard, who'd spent decades positioning himself as the family's business authority, was now deferring to me in conversations. Aunt Margaret, who'd worried about my realistic career prospects, was asking for investment advice. My cousins, who'd joked about my computer toys, were suddenly interested in getting into tech. The shift was so dramatic, it felt like I was living in an alternate reality. On Saturday morning, I got a call from Mom. "Emily, honey, your father and I have been talking. We think you should move back home for a while." "Why?" "Well, you're famous now. There might be security concerns. And you're probably overwhelmed with all the attention. We could help you manage things." I looked around my garage office, where I'd built everything. The whiteboard still had algorithms scrawled across it. The desk where I'd written my first business plan. The chair where I'd taken the call from Jeff Wilk. "I'm fine where I am, Mom." "Are you sure? Because Uncle Richard thinks you should get a financial advisor. Someone to help you manage all this money. He knows some very reputable people." Uncle Richard, the same man who told me to be realistic about my limitations, was now recommending financial advisors to help me manage my $52 million. "I have financial advisors, Mom. Amazon connected me with their preferred wealth management team." "Oh, of course they did. We want to help, sweetheart. We want to be part of your success." There it was again. The desire to be part of something they'd tried to discourage when it was risky, uncertain, and unproven. That afternoon, I drove to my favorite coffee shop in East Austin. Not the Starbucks where people recognized me, but a small place called Radio Coffee, where I'd spent countless hours coding in the early days. I ordered a cortado and sat in the corner booth where I'd had my first video call with a Fortune 500 client. Tapey. As I sat there, I realized something profound had shifted. Not just in how others saw me, but in how I saw myself. For 3 years, I'd been trying to prove something to my family. I'd been seeking validation from people who fundamentally didn't understand what I was building. But now I understood that their validation had never been the point. The point had been building something meaningful, something that solved real problems for real people. The point had been trusting my instincts when everyone else doubted them. My phone buzzed. A text from Bradley. Emily, I hate to bother you, but I have a friend who's trying to raise money for a startup. Could you maybe take a look at his business plan? I told him you're the expert now. The expert. 3 months ago, Bradley had been explaining basic business principles to me. Now I was the expert he consulted. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I opened my laptop and started writing. Not code this time, but something else. A blog post I'd been thinking about since the acquisition was announced. The title was, What My Family Got Wrong About Success. I wrote about the years of doubt, the constant questioning, the well-meaning but misguided advice. I wrote about the difference between supporting someone's dreams and trying to manage their expectations. I wrote about the importance of listening to people instead of assuming you know their story. But I also wrote about gratitude. About how their skepticism had made me more determined. About how their doubt had forced me to become more self-reliant. About how their lack of faith had taught me to have faith in myself. Paukak Borschen Ki Paukang. The post was honest, vulnerable, and direct. It was everything I'd wanted to say during those family dinners, but hadn't found the words for. I published it at 4 p.m. on a Saturday. By 8 p.m., it had been shared 15,000 times. By Sunday morning, it was trending on LinkedIn. By Monday, 3 major publications had reached out about reprinting it. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of entrepreneurs shared their own stories of family members who discouraged their dreams. Thousands of people related to the experience of being underestimated by the people who were supposed to believe in them most. But the most meaningful response came from an unexpected source. Dad called me on Monday evening. Emily, I read your blog post. And I think you were right. About everything. Your mom and I have been talking, and we realize we made some mistakes. We were so focused on protecting you from failure that we didn't see you were actually succeeding. I was quiet for a moment. I appreciate that, Dad. I want you to know that we're proud of you. Not just because of the money, but because you had the courage to follow your instincts when everyone else was telling you to play it safe. It was the first time in 3 years that anyone in my family had acknowledged that my instincts might be worth following. There's something else, Dad continued. I've been thinking about what you said in your post. About the difference between supporting someone's dreams and managing their expectations. I think I've been doing too much of the latter. It's okay, Dad. I turned out fine. But imagine how much better you might have done if we'd supported you from the beginning. If we'd believed in you instead of doubting you. I thought about that. Would I have been more successful with family support? Or had their skepticism actually made me stronger? Had their doubt forced me to develop the resilience that ultimately made DataStream possible? I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe the doubt was necessary. Maybe I needed to prove it to myself before I could prove it to anyone else. Maybe. But you shouldn't have had to do it alone. The conversation lasted for 2 hours. We talked about my childhood, about the family business, about the pressure to follow conventional paths. We talked about risk and reward, about the difference between being protective and being limiting. It was the most honest conversation we'd had in years. After we hung up, I sat in my living room thinking about the past week, about how quickly everything had changed, about how different the world looked when you were on the inside of success instead of the outside. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Chen. Emily, I hope you're enjoying your moment in the spotlight. You've earned it. See you Monday for your first day as an Amazon executive. Amazon executive. 3 months ago, I'd been a garage entrepreneur, with a computer hobby. Now I was an Amazon executive with a platform that would reach millions of users worldwide. But the strangest part wasn't the external changes. It was the internal ones. I no longer felt like I had something to prove. I no longer craved validation from people who didn't understand what I was building. I'd learned that success isn't about convincing other people you're right. It's about being right and having the persistence to prove it, even when everyone else thinks you're wrong. Especially when everyone else thinks you're wrong. The next morning, I woke up to an email from the Austin Chamber of Commerce. They wanted to feature me in their annual Entrepreneurs to Watch publication. The irony wasn't lost on me. They wanted to watch me now that I'd already arrived. I smiled and closed my laptop. Let them watch. I had bigger things to build. The garage where I'd started DataStream was about to become a museum of sorts. The city wanted to put up a historical marker. Tour companies were asking if they could include it in their Austin tech scene walking tours. But for me, it would always be the place where I'd learned the most important lesson of my life, that the only validation that matters is the validation you give yourself. Everything else is just noise. My first day at Amazon's Austin office was nothing like I'd imagined. I'd expected corporate formality, rigid hierarchies, and the kind of bureaucratic maze that kills innovation. Instead, I walked into a building that felt more like a university than a corporation, with open collaboration spaces, whiteboards covered in algorithms, and engineers who looked up from their code to nod respectfully as I passed. "Welcome to your new home," Jennifer Chen said, leading me through the halls. "Jeff wanted me to show you around personally. He's been telling everyone that DataStream is the future of how Amazon thinks about business intelligence." We stopped at a conference room where 23 engineers were working on integration plans. My algorithms, my code, my 3 years of late nights and early mornings, it was all about to become part of the largest cloud computing platform in the world. "These are the people who will be working with your technology," Jennifer explained. "They've been studying DataStream for months. They're calling it the most elegant AI architecture they've ever seen." I looked around the room at some of the brightest minds in tech, all focused on understanding what I'd built in my garage. 6 months ago, my family had been concerned about my computer hobby. Now Amazon's best engineers were studying my work like it was scripture. My phone buzzed with a text from Uncle Richard. "Emily, I saw the news about your first day at Amazon. So proud of you. Could we grab lunch this week? I'd love to hear about your new role." Lunch. Uncle Richard wanted to have lunch. The same man who'd spent Christmas dinner explaining why my business model was unsustainable was now asking me to lunch so he could hear about my new role. I showed the text to Jennifer, who laughed. "Let me guess," she said. "Family member who didn't believe in you before but wants to be involved now." "How did you know?" "Because it happens to every successful entrepreneur. The same people who told you to get a real job suddenly want to be part of your success story. It's like they think success is contagious." That afternoon, I had my first executive meeting. The conference room was filled with people whose names I'd seen in tech publications, whose decisions affected millions of users worldwide. Jeff Wilkes sat at the head of the table, and when he introduced me, he used words like visionary and revolutionary. "Emily's platform is going to change how businesses understand their customers," he said. "The predictive analytics capabilities alone are worth the entire acquisition price. But combined with her natural language processing algorithms, we're looking at technology that could redefine business intelligence." I thought about the family dinner where Derek had joked that maybe I'd get the manure pile as my inheritance. Now I was sitting in a boardroom where the head of Amazon's consumer business was calling my work revolutionary. After the meeting, Jeff pulled me aside. Died. "Emily, I want you to know that we didn't just buy your company. We bought your vision. Amazon has always been about seeing the future before it arrives, and you've built something that's 5 years ahead of anything else in the market." "Thank you," I said, still processing the surreal nature of the conversation. "There's something else. We want you to lead the entire business intelligence division. It's a promotion from the original offer. You'd be overseeing a team of 200 engineers, with a budget of $50 million annually. $50 million. The same amount Amazon had paid for my entire company, now my annual budget for a single division." "What would that mean exactly?" "It means you'd be one of the youngest VPs in Amazon's history. It means you'd have the resources to build everything you've ever dreamed of. It means you'd be setting the direction for how businesses around the world use artificial intelligence. I accepted the promotion that afternoon. By evening, the news had leaked to the tech press. Amazon promotes DataStream founder to VP of Business Intelligence was trending on Twitter by 8 p.m. My family's reaction was swift and overwhelming. Mom called first. "Emily, I just saw the news. Vice President? At Amazon? Honey, do you realize what this means?" What it meant was that my computer hobby had just made me more powerful than anyone in my family had ever been. What it meant was that I was about to oversee more employees than Uncle Richard's construction company had ever had. What it meant was that my annual budget was larger than the Peterson family's entire net worth. But I didn't say any of that. I just said, "It's a good opportunity, Mom." Bradley called 20 minutes later. "Emily, this is incredible. I've been telling everyone at Goldman that you're my cousin. My managing director wants to meet you. He thinks there might be some partnership opportunities between our firms." Partnership opportunities. Bradley's firm wanted to partner with Amazon because of me. The same cousin who'd been concerned about my few $100s a month in revenue was now trying to use our relationship to generate business deals. Sarah called an hour later, crying again. "Emily, I can't believe this is happening. I feel so stupid for everything I said. I've been telling everyone about my brilliant cousin who's now an Amazon VP. I'm so proud of you." The calls continued for hours. Distant relatives I hadn't heard from in years suddenly remembered my existence. Family friends who'd politely ignored my business updates were now eager to reconnect. Even my high school guidance counselor reached out to congratulate me on my incredible achievement. But the most interesting call came from someone I hadn't expected. "Emily, this is David Chen from the Austin Business Journal. I'm working on a follow-up story about your promotion. I'd love to get a quote from you about what this means for Austin's tech scene." A follow-up story. 6 months ago, the Austin Business Journal wouldn't have returned my calls. Now they were writing follow-up stories about my career moves. "I'm honored by Amazon's confidence in me," I said, giving him the kind of corporate speak I'd learned in my first week as an executive. "I'm excited to continue building technology that helps businesses make better decisions. Can you tell me about your long-term vision? Where do you see business intelligence heading in the next 5 years?" I thought about the question. 5 years ago, I'd been sitting in my parents' dining room, listening to lectures about realistic career paths and proven business models. Now I was being asked to predict the future of an entire industry. "I think we're moving toward a world where every business decision is informed by real-time data analysis," I said, "where artificial intelligence doesn't just process information, but provides actionable insights that humans can use to create better outcomes. And you're leading that transformation?" "I'm contributing to it, along with a lot of brilliant people who understand that the future belongs to those who can turn data into wisdom." After the interview, I sat in my new office, a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Austin, and reflected on the past month. Everything had changed so quickly that I sometimes felt like I was living someone else's life. My assistant knocked on the door. "Ms. Peterson, you have a visitor. Richard Thompson? He says he's your uncle. Uncle Richard." Standing in my office lobby, probably trying to figure out how to process the fact that his delusional niece now had an assistant, a corner office, and a title that commanded respect in boardrooms around the world. "Send him in," I said. He walked in looking smaller than I remembered. Not physically smaller, but diminished somehow. Like he'd been forced to recalibrate his understanding of the world, and wasn't sure where he fit in the new version. "Emily," he said, looking around the office with obvious amazement. This is incredible. I had no idea." "What can I do for you, Uncle Richard?" I wanted to apologize. Properly. Not just for what I said at the family meeting, but for years of not taking you seriously. I was wrong. Completely wrong. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Have a seat. I keep thinking about all the times I told you to be realistic. All the times I explained why your ideas wouldn't work. I was so convinced that I understood business better than you did." "You understood traditional business," I said. "There's a difference." "No, Emily, I didn't understand business at all. I understood one type of business, the type that's been around for decades. But you saw something I couldn't see. You saw the future. We talked for an hour. He told me about his construction company, about how he'd been struggling to compete with firms that used modern project management software, about how he'd been resistant to change, comfortable with methods that had worked for 40 years. "I could use your help," he said finally. "Not your money, not your connections, your perspective. I need to understand how to adapt." It was the first time anyone in my family had asked for my perspective on anything. "I'd be happy to help," I said, "but I need you to understand something. I'm not the same person who sat quietly at your dinner table while you explained why my dreams were impossible. I'm not going to shrink back down to make you comfortable." "I wouldn't want you to," he said. "I want you to be exactly who you are. Because who you are is extraordinary." After he left, I stood at my window looking out at the city where I'd built everything. Austin had been good to me. It had given me the space to experiment, to fail, to iterate, to succeed. It had been the perfect place to build something from nothing. But now I was building something even bigger, not just a platform, but a vision of how technology could transform human potential. Not just a company, but a movement toward a more intelligent, more connected, more capable world. And the best part? I was just getting started. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Emily, Jeff wants to discuss your Q2 goals tomorrow. He's thinking about expanding your division internationally. Are you ready to take DataStream global?" Global. My little computer hobby was about to become a global platform that would touch millions of lives, influence billions of decisions, and reshape entire industries. I smiled and typed back, "I'm ready." Because that's what you do when you've spent 3 years building something extraordinary while everyone else told you it was impossible. You keep building, you keep dreaming, you keep proving that the future belongs to those who are brave enough to create it. Especially when everyone else thinks you're wrong. 6 months after the Amazon acquisition, I stood in the same conference room where my family had dismissed my computer hobby. But this time, I wasn't there for a family meeting. I was there to deliver the keynote address at the Austin Tech Summit, and the Peterson Family Trust had purchased a corporate sponsorship table. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same boardroom where they'd explained why my business would fail was now hosting Austin's most prestigious technology conference, largely because of my success. The same table where Uncle Richard had lectured me about realistic expectations was now surrounded by venture capitalists, tech executives, and entrepreneurs who'd come to hear my insights on the future of AI. "Ladies and gentlemen," the conference organizer announced, "please welcome Emily Peterson, Vice President of Business Intelligence at Amazon Web Services, founder of DataStream Solutions, and one of Forbes 30 Under 30. The applause was thunderous. I looked out at the audience of 400 people and saw faces I recognized from TechCrunch articles, LinkedIn profiles, and business magazines. These were the leaders of Austin's tech ecosystem, and they were here to listen to me. But in the front row, I saw another set of familiar faces. My entire family, dressed in their finest business attire, beaming with pride. Mom had tears in her eyes. Dad was recording everything on his phone. Uncle Richard was taking notes like he was attending a master class. "A year ago," I began, "I was working out of my garage, building something that most people didn't understand. Including my family." I gestured toward the front row, and gentle laughter rippled through the audience. They thought I was playing with computers. They were worried about my future. They suggested I get a real job. More laughter, but this time it was knowing, understanding. Half the audience had lived through similar experiences. Today I want to talk about the difference between vision and delusion, between persistence and stubbornness, between believing in yourself and being naive about reality. I clicked to my first slide, which showed DataStream's growth curve over 3 years. The trajectory was almost vertical. This is what happens when you build something the world needs, even if the world doesn't know it needs it yet. Even if the people closest to you don't understand it. Even if you're the only one who believes it's possible. I spent the next 45 minutes sharing the technical details of how DataStream worked, the business strategy behind the Amazon acquisition, and the vision for where artificial intelligence was heading. But I also shared the personal journey, the late nights, the doubt, the moments when I'd questioned everything. The hardest part wasn't building the technology, I said. The hardest part was maintaining conviction when everyone else thought I was making a mistake. The hardest part was trusting my instincts when conventional wisdom pointed in the opposite direction. I looked at my family again. They were hanging on every word, finally understanding what I'd been trying to build all along. Success isn't about proving other people wrong. It's about proving yourself right. It's about having the courage to pursue something that matters to you, even when the path isn't clear, even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. The standing ovation lasted for 3 minutes. Afterward, I was surrounded by entrepreneurs, investors, and journalists who wanted to continue the conversation. Business cards were pressed into my hands. Meeting requests filled my calendar. Speaking opportunities multiplied. But the most meaningful moment came when the crowd cleared, and I was left alone with my family. "Emily," Mom said, pulling me into a hug, "that was incredible. I finally understand what you've been building. I finally understand why you had to do it your way." Dad nodded. "I'm sorry it took us so long to see it. But I'm proud of you. Not just for the success, but for the courage to believe in something when nobody else did." Uncle Richard approached me with an expression I'd never seen before: genuine humility. "Emily, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you acknowledgement. You were right about everything. About the future, about technology, about the importance of taking risks. I spent so many years trying to protect you from failure that I almost prevented you from succeeding." "You didn't prevent anything," I said. "You made me stronger. You made me more determined. You forced me to develop the resilience I needed to build something this big." "Still," he said, "I should have believed in you. You believe in me now. That's what matters." We went to dinner that night at the same restaurant where we'd had countless family gatherings, the same place where they'd suggested I consider more stable career paths and realistic alternatives. But the dynamic had completely shifted. Instead of lecturing me about business fundamentals, they were asking questions about emerging technologies. Instead of offering career advice, they were seeking my perspective on market trends. Instead of worrying about my future, they were excited about what I might build next. "So what's next for you?" Sarah asked. "Are you going to stay at Amazon long term, or do you have plans for another startup?" "I'm focused on building something meaningful at Amazon right now," I said. "We're expanding DataStream internationally. We're integrating it with Alexa, with AWS, with every part of Amazon's ecosystem. We're going to touch billions of lives." "Billions?" Bradley repeated, shaking his head. "Emily, do you realize how insane that is? 3 years ago you were coding in your garage. Now you're building technology that will be used by billions of people." "It's not insane," I said. "It's the natural progression of a good idea executed well. It's what happens when you solve a real problem for real people." The conversation continued for hours. We talked about technology, about business, about the future of work. But we also talked about family, about support, about the importance of believing in each other's dreams. "I learned something important from all this," Dad said as we were leaving. "I learned that there's a difference between protecting someone and limiting them. I thought I was being responsible by encouraging you to play it safe. But playing it safe isn't always responsible. Sometimes the most responsible thing you can do is take a big risk on something you believe in." 3 weeks later, I received an invitation that made me laugh out loud. The Austin Chamber of Commerce wanted to induct me into their Business Hall of Fame. The ceremony would be held at the Hilton downtown, and I was asked to give the keynote address on entrepreneurial excellence in the digital age. The same organization that had ignored my emails for 3 years now wanted to honor my entrepreneurial excellence. I accepted the invitation, but with a condition. I wanted to use the platform to talk about something more important than my personal success. I wanted to talk about the importance of supporting unconventional thinkers, of believing in ideas that don't fit traditional molds, of creating space for innovation to flourish. The night of the ceremony, I stood at the podium looking out at Austin's business establishment. CEOs, politicians, investors, and community leaders filled the ballroom. These were the people who shaped the city's economic future, who decided which ideas got funded and which ones got dismissed. "Innovation doesn't come from consensus," I said. "It comes from individuals who are willing to disagree with consensus. It comes from people who see problems others ignore, who imagine solutions others think are impossible. I paused and looked at my family, who were sitting at the VIP table, beaming with pride. A year ago, some of you might have dismissed my work as a hobby, a computer project, something that wasn't quite serious enough to warrant attention. And that's okay. Not every idea deserves attention, but some do. And the challenge for all of us is learning to recognize the difference. I shared DataStream's story one more time, but this time I focused on the implications for the broader business community. The importance of supporting young entrepreneurs. The value of diverse perspectives. The need to create environments where unconventional ideas can flourish. The next DataStream is being built right now, probably in someone's garage, by someone who doesn't look like a traditional entrepreneur. They might be young, they might be different, they might be pursuing an idea that doesn't fit our conventional understanding of how business works. I looked around the room at the faces of Austin's business leaders. Our job is to find them, to support them, to believe in them, even when we don't fully understand what they're building. Because the future belongs to those who can see it before it arrives. The speech was later excerpted in the Harvard Business Review and became one of the most shared articles on LinkedIn that year. But the most meaningful response came from someone I didn't expect. A week later, I received an email from a 22-year-old computer science student at UT. She was working on a project in her dorm room, something related to virtual reality and education. She'd been told by professors that her idea was quote, too ambitious and not commercially viable. "I saw your speech at the Chamber of Commerce," she wrote. "It gave me the courage to keep going, to trust my instincts, even when everyone else thinks I'm wrong. I wanted to thank you for showing me that it's possible." I replied immediately, offering to meet for coffee. Not because I wanted to invest in her project, but because I remembered what it felt like to build something alone, to believe in an idea when nobody else did. 6 months later, her virtual reality platform was acquired by Google for $30 million. The cycle continued. Vision, persistence, success, inspiration. Each generation of entrepreneurs building on the foundation laid by the previous one. Each success story creating space for the next unconventional idea to flourish. And at the center of it all was a simple truth. I'd learned in my garage, refined in boardrooms, and proven in the marketplace. The future belongs to those who are brave enough to create it. Even when everyone else thinks they're wrong, Amalis. Especially when everyone else thinks they're wrong, Amalis there. As I sat in my office that evening, looking out at the Austin skyline, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. From family dinners where I was dismissed as naive to boardrooms where I was respected as visionary. From a garage startup to a global platform. From computer hobby to life's work. The transformation hadn't just been external, it had been internal too. I'd learned to trust my instincts, to believe in my vision, to persist when others doubted. I'd learned that validation comes from within, not from external approval. Most importantly, I'd learned that success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. It's about having the courage to pursue something meaningful, even when the path isn't clear, even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Chen. "Emily, exciting news. Jeff wants to discuss your promotion to Senior VP. Plus, we're thinking about spinning DataStream into its own subsidiary with you as CEO. Are you interested?" I smiled and typed back, "I'm interested." Because that's what you do when you've spent your life building something extraordinary while everyone else told you it was impossible. You keep building, you keep dreaming, you keep proving that the future belongs to those who are brave enough to create it. La bobolo sabolo, lol sabolo. And you help others do the same. Lovolo pakan. The story wasn't over, it was just beginning. Lol sabolo ki. 2 years after the Amazon acquisition, I stood in the boardroom of DataStream Technologies, the independent company that had spun off from Amazon Web Services with me as CEO. The mahogany table was surrounded by faces I'd handpicked, brilliant engineers, visionary product managers, and strategic leaders who shared my conviction that artificial intelligence could transform human potential. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, I'm pleased to report that DataStream Technologies has just closed our Series A funding round. $120 million, led by Andreessen Horowitz, with participation from Google Ventures, Kleiner Perkins, and Jeff Bezos personally. The room erupted in applause. My CFO, Elena Martinez, who'd been with me since the garage days, wiped away tears. Marcus Chen, now our Chief Technology Officer, shook his head in amazement. These were the people who'd believed in the vision when it was just lines of code on a whiteboard. But that's not the most important news, I continued. The most important news is that we now have the resources to execute on our 5-year plan. We're going to democratize artificial intelligence. We're going to make advanced business intelligence accessible to every company in every industry anywhere in the world. What I didn't tell them was that Jeff Bezos had called me personally the night before. Emily, he'd said, I've been watching what you've built since leaving Amazon. DataStream Technologies is going to be bigger than the original acquisition. You're creating something that will outlast all of us. Thank you, Jeff. That means everything coming from you. I want you to know that Amazon will always be your biggest customer and your strongest supporter. But more than that, I want you to know that you've changed how I think about innovation. You've shown me that the best ideas don't come from focus groups or market research. They come from individuals who see problems others ignore. After the funding announcement, I had lunch with my family at a restaurant downtown. The dynamic had evolved completely over the past 2 years. Instead of worried questions about my future, they now asked strategic questions about market opportunities. Instead of suggesting I get a real job, they were investing in my vision. Emily, Uncle Richard said, I've been thinking about what you said about democratizing AI. My construction company has been using DataStream for 6 months now, and it's revolutionized how we manage projects. We're more efficient, more profitable, and making better decisions. That's exactly what we hoped for, I said. AI shouldn't be something that only tech companies can access. It should be a tool that helps every business perform better. Speaking of which, Dad added, the law firm has been using DataStream to analyze case outcomes and client satisfaction. We're seeing patterns we never noticed before. It's like having a crystal ball for legal strategy. The conversation continued for 2 hours. We talked about the future of work, the ethical implications of AI, the importance of using technology to solve real problems. But we also talked about family, about support, about how far we'd all come. I have a confession, Mom said as we were finishing dessert. I kept a scrapbook of all your press coverage, every article, every interview, every award. I wanted to document your journey. She pulled out a thick leather-bound book and opened it to the first page. There was a printout of my very first business license, the one I'd gotten 3 years ago, when DataStream was just an idea. The next page showed the TechCrunch article about the Amazon acquisition. The pages that followed chronicled my transformation from garage entrepreneur to tech visionary. I realized something while putting this together, she continued. You never changed. We did. You were always brilliant, always driven, always capable of extraordinary things. We just couldn't see it because we were looking at the wrong metrics. What do you mean? We were measuring success by traditional standards. Stable job, steady income, conventional career path. But you were building something that couldn't be measured by those standards. You were creating the future. 3 months later, I received a call that would change everything again. Emily, this is Dr. Sarah Kim from the MacArthur Foundation. I'm calling to inform you that you've been selected as a MacArthur Fellow. Congratulations. The MacArthur Fellowship. The Genius Grant. One of the most prestigious awards in America, given to individuals who show exceptional creativity and potential for future contribution. I'm sorry, what? You've been recognized for your pioneering work in artificial intelligence and your commitment to democratizing advanced technology. The fellowship comes with a $625,000 grant, payable over 5 years, with no strings attached. I sat in my office, staring out at the Austin skyline, trying to process what I'd just heard. The MacArthur Fellowship wasn't just about money. It was about recognition. It was about being acknowledged as someone who was changing the world in fundamental ways. Modite sapsak spolachagana. The news broke the next morning. Austin Tech CEO Emily Peterson, named MacArthur Fellow, was the headline in the Austin American-Statesman. The article described my journey from, quote, garage startup to global platform and positioned me as one of the most influential young leaders in artificial intelligence. My phone started ringing immediately. Interview requests from 60 Minutes, CNN, The Today Show, speaking invitations from Harvard, Stanford, MIT, book deal offers from major publishers. The MacArthur Fellowship had elevated me from successful entrepreneur to cultural icon, but the most meaningful call came from someone I hadn't expected. Emily? This is Dr. Jennifer Martinez from UT's Computer Science Department. I'm calling because we'd like to offer you something unique. What kind of something? We want to create the Emily Peterson Center for Entrepreneurial Innovation, a research institute focused on helping students turn innovative ideas into world-changing companies. You'd be the founding director. I was quiet for a moment. You want to name a research center after me? We want you to build something that will outlast your current success, something that will help the next generation of entrepreneurs avoid the obstacles you faced, something that will ensure Austin remains at the forefront of technological innovation. The Emily Peterson Center. 3 years ago, I'd been dismissed as a college dropout with unrealistic expectations. Now the University of Texas wanted to create a research center in my name. I'm interested, I said, but I have conditions. Name them. First, we focus on supporting underrepresented entrepreneurs, women, minorities, first-generation college students, the people who face the most skepticism when they pursue unconventional ideas. Absolutely. Second, we provide real resources, not just mentorship, but funding, technical support, legal assistance. Everything I wish I'd had when I was starting out. Done. Third, we measure success differently, not just by revenue or valuations, but by impact, by problems solved, lives improved, barriers broken. That's exactly what we had in mind. The center opened 18 months later with a $50 million endowment, funded by DataStream Technologies, Amazon, and dozens of other companies that had benefited from my work. The inaugural class included 30 students working on everything from medical diagnostics to renewable energy to educational technology. But the project that meant the most to me was led by Maria Santos, a 20-year-old computer science student whose parents had immigrated from Mexico. She was building an AI-powered platform to help small businesses navigate complex regulations and tax requirements. Professor Peterson, she said during our first mentoring session, my family thinks I'm wasting my time. They want me to get a job at a big company, something stable and predictable. They don't understand why I'm trying to build something from nothing. I smiled, remembering similar conversations with my own family. What do you think? I think I'm solving a real problem. I think small businesses need this technology. I think I can build something that matters. Then build it, I said. Don't let anyone else's limitations become your limitations. 6 months later, Maria's platform was processing tax filings for 10,000 small businesses across Texas. A year later, she'd raised $5 million in seed funding and was expanding nationally. 2 years later, her company was acquired by Intuit for $75 million. The cycle continued. Vision, persistence, success, inspiration. Each generation of entrepreneurs building on the foundation laid by the previous one. Each success story creating space for the next unconventional idea to flourish. On the 3rd anniversary of the Amazon acquisition, I gave a commencement address at UT's graduation ceremony. As I looked out at 3,000 graduates and their families, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. The world will try to convince you that innovation is risky, I told them. That unconventional thinking is dangerous. That the safe path is the smart path. But I'm here to tell you that the riskiest thing you can do is play it safe when the world is changing around you. I paused and looked at my family in the audience. They were sitting in the front row, beaming with pride, wearing t-shirts that said Team Emily, a far cry from the worried expressions they'd worn 3 years earlier. The future belongs to those who see problems others ignore, who imagine solutions others think are impossible, who have the courage to pursue their vision even when everyone else thinks they're wrong. The standing ovation lasted for 5 minutes. But the moment that mattered most came afterward, when a young woman approached me with tears in her eyes. "Miss Peterson," she said, "I'm about to graduate with a degree in computer science. I have an idea for a startup, but everyone tells me it's too risky. That I should get a job at a big company first. That I should be more realistic." I smiled and handed her my card. "Come see me next week. Let's talk about your idea." Because that's what you do when you've spent your life building something extraordinary, while everyone else told you it was impossible. You keep building, you keep dreaming, you keep proving that the future belongs to those who are brave enough to create it, and you help others do the same. That evening, I sat in my office, not the Amazon office, not the DataStream office, but my home office, the same garage where I'd started everything. The walls were covered with photos now, the original team, the Amazon acquisition announcement, the MacArthur Fellowship ceremony, the center opening. But the photo that meant the most was the newest one. Maria Santos holding a check for $75 million, surrounded by her team, grinning with the same mixture of disbelief and determination I'd felt 3 years earlier. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Chen. "Emily, saw the news about Maria's acquisition. You're not just building companies anymore. You're building entrepreneurs. That's legacy." I typed back, "Just paying it forward." Because that's what success really means. Not just achieving your own dreams, but creating space for others to achieve theirs. Not just proving yourself right, but helping others trust their own instincts. Not just building something extraordinary, but teaching others that extraordinary things are possible. Hachi go. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning. And this time, I wouldn't be writing it alone. The future belonged to all of us who were brave enough to create it. Especially when everyone else thought we were wrong. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.